So part of the gist of today is almost like a look to the future of health and fitness coaching. What is this going to look like in the next few years, and how you can prepare yourself to be successful in that space?
And so I decided that I was going to start getting better, that I was going to start reading and start pushing myself and seeing how far I can take myself.
Maybe I just don't have what it takes. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I'm not committed enough. My fears were getting the best of me.
Cool. So today, there's basically three things I want to cover today. We have about 60 minutes together. And the first thing is I want to share a little bit about my story. And that's only relevant in the context of what comes after that, which is sort of the precision nutrition story. And then after that, I want to make it about your story. How many of you guys work in health and fitness right now? Personal trainers, coaches, nutrition coaches, is that what some of you do? Awesome. So part of the gist of today is almost like a look to the future of health and fitness coaching. And I think precision nutrition has provided like a little bit of a model for that. And so that's what I want to kind of go over today. Nothing. The guys are so stressed out right now. They're like, oh, how do we make this work? So I'll just talk without slides then. So really my story begins with my intro into health and fitness. The year was 1991. And I had a great mentor when I was young. And he sort of owned a chain of health clubs in our town. And he gave me my first gig. Basically, I was working the front desk of a gym, of a health and fitness club. And I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, but I guess I didn't suck too bad at the front desk. And he had me taking people through circuits. And at the time, the way that this whole thing worked is there was like a free weight area of health and fitness clubs. Again, this was like the early 90s. And there was a circuit area. So just a bunch of machines, like a seated press, and next to it was a seated row. And then you had a leg extension and a leg curl. And every member of the club had like a card stock program where you would, as their trainer, you weren't really doing much. You were just writing down how many reps they did on that exercise and how many sets. So that was like my next gig. I graduated from front desk to taking people through circuits. And then sort of eventually I progressed to getting my trainer certification and becoming certified as a health and fitness and lifestyle coach. And I didn't really get my first main gig. So pause for a second. Are we going to get going or no? No chance. Oh, sweet. Look at that. Here we go. Let's catch up. Okay, so I really didn't get my first time gig in this space until I moved down to Miami Beach, and this was like late 90s, and I started a personal training business down there. And I don't know if any of you experienced Miami Beach in the late 90s, but it was a great scene at the time. Health and fitness was huge, and so within the first month of working down there, I had a crazy client schedule. You know, I was full, I was booked up, but my clients were actors and actresses, people who you know, musicians, professional athletes. I was a young trainer, and that was a lot for me, and it was exciting for me. And I was kind of wrapped up in that for a little while. I had clients who would literally send their private jet from Brazil to come pick me up to train them down in Brazil. And actors and actresses were like, come out on my yacht and train me on my yacht. And I'm like 21, 22 years old. And I'm making a ton of money for the first time in my life. I'm rolling with these A-listers. But after a while, that becomes your normal. And I started looking at the results that I was getting for clients, okay? And so two major kind of concerns emerged for me when I was running this personal training business as well as it was doing, and it was this. You know, I had basically 20 clients at the time, and if you're working with them each 3 times a week, you know, you're looking at 60 hours a week on the gym floor just training people. And of course, that's not all you're doing as a sort of ambitious person, as an ambitious personal trainer. Well, that's weird. You guys know what's happening? It's kind of like not advancing the slides. All right, I guess I'll just tell the story. So what was happening was, you're spending 60 hours a week on the gym floor, but you're also having to do like business development stuff. You have to get new leads. You have to nurture leads that you met in case someone drops out or they go on vacation or they go to do a movie and then you need to fill their spot. And then you're doing, so it's marketing, so it's lifestyle coaching, so it's talking about nutrition. So you tack on another like 20 hours a week on top of the 60 that you're spending, and all of a sudden you're 80 hours a week. And for me, at the time, and it persists to today, I was super passionate and on fire for health and fitness, right? I wanted to go out there, I wanted to change the world, I wanted to change the industry, I wanted to impact a lot of lives. And if I had good retention, I'd only really be influencing like 40 people a year, right? You have 20 clients going on at any point in time, maybe half of them don't make it the whole year, and then you have turnover, so then maybe you're influencing 40 people, and that really wasn't enough for me. I felt like my impact was too small, okay? I really wanted to make a big difference. I thought I had a message that could make a big difference, but it wasn't really bearing out. I mean, it was too few people for the reality of what I wanted to accomplish. So then then comes sort of the next problem, the second problem that I really encountered, and it was the results. When I looked at the results, I'd say every 1 out of 20 client, for example, got what I would call jaw-dropping transformation, right? Like they'd be walking around on South Beach and one of their old friends would see them and be like, oh my God, what happened to you? You look like a different person, okay? And that's the sort of transformation experience you hope for when you're working with clients, but it was happening only like 1 out of 20 times. And then maybe another, 9 out of those 20 times, people would get noticeable results, but nothing sort of jaw-dropping or, nothing to write home about. And then there was like 5 clients who didn't get great results at all, but for some reason they were still excited to be working with me. At the time, I couldn't figure out why. I was a young guy, and it was South Beach, and I'm like, doesn't everyone just want to look super hot, and you're not looking hot yet, and aren't you frustrated? But they were, and they were just happy, and now I kind of realized for some of them it was like they were just doing this to neutralize their other lifestyle choices, right? They're like, I'm not dying at as rapid a pace anymore, and I'm fine with that. I don't need abs, right? And then there were 5 people who I never heard from again, right? You don't know why, they just kind of disappear, and those are the kind of people we discount as coaches. We're like, they weren't serious, they weren't committed, whatever, but you have to count them, right? Because you're their coach. There was something missing from the equation. And so that was the second major problem for me. I was working my ass off. I was working 80 hours a week. I was only impacting maybe 20 or 40 people a year. And of the people that I was working with, maybe 2 were having a jaw-dropping transformation. Now, any of you coaches ever felt some of this in your practices? Okay, so a lot of you are like, yeah, totally, I get you. So that's the whole point of today. What happened to take me from frustrated coach in this kind of scenario where I wasn't having as big of an impact to where we are today? And that's kind of what I want to go over. And I had some really nice graphs to show you guys and stuff. But I'll just talk you through it. So at that time, after a few years, it kind of went on like this for a while. At that time, I started to get a little bit frustrated with what I call the industry, right? I was like, oh man, I'm not making a big impact, I'm working too much, I'm making decent cash, but not enough for how many hours I work. Maybe I should just leave the industry. Maybe you can't make a good living here. Maybe, I don't know, it's not for me. So I started to actually externalize it and do the whole poor me thing and blame the industry for this problem. And I decided to take some time off from doing this, and my decision at the time was go back to school. So I'm like, maybe I could go back to school and learn more about this. Maybe that'll help me level up and be a better coach and figure out the business side. It's kind of foolish, right? Like a master's in exercise physiology is not going to help you out to figure out the business of coaching. Or not even necessarily going to figure out change psychology, how to help walk clients through the change process. But whatever, I did it. Okay, and I went and did my master's, then I went on and did a PhD in exercise and nutritional biochemistry, and I don't regret any of those decisions, but they didn't necessarily put me on that path to better coach, the thing that was frustrating me. But the one thing that happened that was amazing and really fortunate for me was during my PhD studies, I met a guy named Phil Caravaggio. So Phil was a systems design engineer at a university that was just a couple hours up the road from where I went to school. So I grew up in Pennsylvania. I grew up in the States, but I went to Canada for university. So I did my PhD at a university called Western University in a place called London. And he was at a school called Waterloo. And Waterloo's kind of like the MIT of Canada. So it's a really high-profile engineering school. So we met because we were both interested in working out, but he did systems design engineering. So he was building like web interfaces for IBM and for other companies like that. And so we got to be friends, and I started telling him about some of my frustrations in the space. And he was like, hey, listen, there's nothing I can do to tell you how to be a better coach, but some of the problems you're having, like not being able to reach enough people, like not having systems to do the things that are annoying to you as a coach, like billing and all that other stuff, that's a solved problem in other industries. Like companies like Dell, and Dell was big at the time, and Apple and IBM and Intel, these guys build things like this for other industries to make all the things you complain about predominantly just go away. So we could work on that together. And I'm like, that would be pretty sweet, actually. So, we sat down and we started asking ourselves a couple of questions. And I think this is really critical. I think all great innovations come from questions more than anything. We can talk about the goal that you have and all that stuff, but I think before the goal comes critical questions. So for us, the questions were, is there a way we could impact, coach, work with more people? Okay? Is there a way to do that? And I'm not just talking about a few more, but way more than 20 or 40 people a year. Okay? Is there a way to do that where we get more leverage? So when I say leverage here, I mean leverage over our time. So for every hour I work, it's like 100 hours that I would have worked without this kind of system or this kind of plan that we have, and leverage over the clients. So what I mean by that is there a way for us to use this system that we're going to use to help make it easier for clients to change? Okay? So we have leverage over their experience. It's more likely for them to do the things that they came to us saying that they wanted to do, but we're struggling with doing. So is there a way to work with way more people? Is there a way to get better leverage over the people that we're working with? Is there maybe a way to work way fewer hours ourselves? And is there a way to make way more money doing that? Okay? Now, often we think a lot of these things are contradictory, right? We're like, yeah, that's cool wanting to work with more people, but if you have a bigger client load, doesn't that mean worse results? You can't possibly give all that personal attention to someone if you have 300 clients versus 30. And again, it comes back to questions. Is there a way to do all this without client results getting worse? Or what if there's a way to do it with client results getting better? So we set out these questions and like, maybe we're insane. Maybe there's no way to do all these things. But if we don't ask and if we don't try, then of course it's not going to happen. So that's kind of where we arrived at the early stage of precision nutrition, okay? And at this point, I had a really motivating, exciting 2 or 3 minute video to show you where you can see what we're talking about. Because for some of you who aren't familiar with what we do at Precision Nutrition, we've coached like 200,000 people now. And we give away $250,000 every year to our big prize winners. We literally fly all over the world, the people who have the best transformations in our programs, and we show up at their door in the dark of night sometimes, surprise them at work with giant novelty checks for $25,000 or $50,000. And if you could see some of the slides, you would see where these people are making transformative, magical, awesome changes to their bodies and their lives in sustainable ways. And so that for me was the proof for you guys to feel. You're not going to be able to feel it, unfortunately, to feel what I'm talking about here when I say, is there a way to work with way more people without results dropping off? So nowadays we've worked with, a couple 100,000 people with only 20 coaches. So I was complaining early in my career, man, I can only work with 20 people at a time, and now our coaches work with about 350 people at a time. And again, everyone's instinct at this stage is to go, yeah, well, but you can't possibly give them the attention required to get phenomenal results. And that's where I disagree. That's what we created, a thing where that wasn't a problem. And again, I would love to show you the video. I'd love to show you the photos. thousands and thousands of transformations that are better than what I ever did as a one-on-one coach, using a system that allows our coaches to work with 350 clients at a time instead of 20, okay? So for today, this was all sort of the backstory leading up to, what happened? What did we build? What did we create? And how can you use that in your coaching practice to get some of the same outcomes, okay? So for me, it really boils down to three things, okay? Number one is what we call a practice-based curriculum, and I'll unpack each of these in a minute. Number two is what we call sort of elite world-class coaching. And then number three is what we call sort of digital health and fitness technology, okay? So I want to show you how they all fit together and how they produce the things that we've produced, okay? So the first is what we call sort of a practice-based curriculum. We spent a lot of time after learning about nutrition and exercise and the physiological side of it in change psychology. Learning about, what are the things that stick people up when it comes to change? Why can they understand that they ought to eat this way and then not actually do it in the moment, okay? And we learned over that sort of process of discovery that what they were missing were skills. It wasn't discipline. It wasn't stick-to-itiveness and courage and fortitude. It was skills. They just didn't have the skills to do it yet. And then we asked the question, how do you build these skills in people? How do you systematically build these skills? Not so that 1 in 20 gets it, but 20 out of 20 get it. And so we sort of created a model of how to think about translating goals into skills and practices. And again, I have a chart that I would have loved to show you where basically the idea is we talk a lot in fitness about goals. What's your goal? Let's write down your goal. Oh, don't forget your goal. But the fact of the matter is goals don't help you do anything, okay? That's just your vision of a hopeful future for yourself. What's needed to achieve any goal is a particular skill. And if you don't have that goal now, it's because you don't have that skill, okay? Let's take it out of fitness for a second and say, let's say you want to learn to play the piano really well. So you can write that down and have courage and discipline or whatever, but your fingers actually need to do something on a keyboard, right? And how do you learn that? Well, let's look at how kids learn, right? They have to do scales and boring drills so that they learn how, their brain learns how to make their fingers do things when they see notes on this page, right? My daughter plays the piano, and I watch her practice, and I watch what it goes through, and it's a beautiful example of skill progression, right? Someone learning the skill to play piano begins with hundreds of practices that they have to do every day to develop that skill. So now let's take it back to fitness, okay? Let's say I want to eat better is your goal, or I want to lose 20 pounds. Well, what skills would you need to eat better or lose 20 pounds? Well, there's a bunch of them that you don't have if that's your goal. So you can't stop at skills though. Skills have to be drilled and taught through practices, okay? Something that you do every single day until it becomes sort of second nature. So the question becomes, how do you break that down? So that's what we've done in our coaching. Our coaching is a year-long program, and during that year, every 2 weeks we give someone a new practice that they have to do every day. And that new practice builds to the next practice, to the next one, to the next one. And each set of practices lives under a skill development sort of bracket where we're like, these two practices build that skill. And then we're going to build a new skill from these two practices. And you hear a lot of this practice language in yoga and mindfulness. And we borrow from that as well because I'll give you an example on the nutrition space. If someone wants to eat better, we know they have to do something with their proteins, carbs, and fats, right? Yes. But if they're not even aware of what they're eating or the process of eating or that they eat too quickly or that they eat mindlessly, that never gets fixed, okay? So for us, skill number one is pay attention to your eating, okay? And so you could stop there, but that would be a mistake because that's just what I call proselytizing, right? Pay attention to your life. Pay attention to your eating. Be more mindful, right? But what do you have to do today to be more mindful? Well, one thing that we do, the very first practice we have people do, is to slow down their eating, okay? The only way to pay better attention to anything is to slow it down. Think about skill development, again, in any other space, okay? When you're an expert piano player, okay, the notes are coming along right at the right pace, all right? But when you're new, it's information overload. It's happening too fast. How do we slow it down? So slow down your eating is practice number one when we work with new clients. So they spend 2 weeks with sort of discrete instruction on how to slow down their eating. And they have to check off every single day. And again, I would have loved to show you our digital coaching platform, but every day on their phone, every day on their laptop, every day wherever they get digital messages, there's a card that comes up and asks them, did you do your practice today? Yes or no? And that's the level of accountability we provide. And then each day there's a lesson that comes along with that to sort of help them look for new ways to practice slowing down or whatever the practices they're working on. And then the next series, beyond slow down your eating, goes to eat until 80% full. Okay? So once we've slowed down, we start talking about tuning into appetite and hunger signals. You can't tune into those unless you've practiced slowing down and gotten good out of it, built that skill. Now you can start to think about this, this hunger signals idea, and then we teach people, what does 80% feel like? What does full feel like? What does stuffed feel like? 120%. And you can see over the course of the first 4 weeks of coaching with us, we've built the skill of paying attention to your eating, okay? So you're paying attention to how fast you're going and all the emotions you feel while you're eating, what you're eating in the process, and then how full you are. Now you know when to stop. Oh wow, that was 110% full. That was probably too much. I shouldn't eat that much next time. Now, that's usually annoying for our clients because they're like, I hired you to help me get in shape and you haven't told me what not to eat yet. You haven't even told me what to eat yet. I'm still eating pizza and I don't care because they're still losing weight because they're eating less pizza. They're eating it more mindfully. They know how they feel and they're making probably 100 other tiny decisions that are implicit. They're helping move them forward towards their goal without mean coach telling them what not to do, okay? So this is a year long, so we have practices for every 2 weeks, and we build up the skills required to have transformative change. Now, we have a bunch of criterion for how to build skills, and this is where I want to talk about you, okay? This is how we coach, and again, we've had fantastic results. I want you to start thinking about your coaching, or even if you're interested in health and fitness for yourself, your own practices, okay? How can you take what I'm talking about here and bring it into your world, all right? Who cares if Precision Nutrition does it after this event? You can come see our website and you can read about it, whatever. But how can you use it in your practice? What kind of skills are your clients trying to build? What kind of practices do they need to build them? Start thinking about that now so you can start taking this idea and applying it in your world, okay? And the way that we build practices, we call it sort of the 5S criteria, okay? So the first is simple, okay? The idea is when you give a client a new practice and you ask them from a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being that's so easy, like a trained monkey could do it, or 10 being there's no way I could ever do that, even if I quit my job, got rid of my children, had nothing but free time, there's no way I could ever do that. Did I say 0 and 10? It's actually 0 is no way I could ever do that, 10 being a trained monkey could do that. So we want people to be 8 out of 10 on the scale. And how do we know? We ask them, right? So here's the next practice we might work on. How confident do you feel you can do this every day for the next 2 weeks? Ask for a number, 0 being no chance, 10 being of course I could do that. And if they're not 8 out of 10, we have to make it simpler. So the idea of the practices is it has to be simple, okay? Next, it has to be what we call strategic, okay? So some people have called it small, right? So the practice is small and feels doable. I like strategic because small I feel like is a little bit patronizing. You know, you go to a client and say, hey, I've got a habit for you to practice for the next 2 weeks. It's a little baby habit though, because you can't handle any more than that. Super patronizing. Strategic is, what's the thing that's small-ish and you feel confident you can do every day for the next 2 weeks that actually removes a log that's causing the log jam? Okay, this doesn't have to be slow. If there's something that's standing in your way from eating better right now, this one log that's creating the log jam, and we can remove that, I don't need you to start eating paleo today. I just need to get rid of that lack of vitamin A or whatever, right? And a good example might be, I've worked with a lot of athletes over the years, a female athlete who doesn't eat red meat, might be deficient in iron. Something's going on there. Poor endurance capacity, feels tired all the time, struggles with performance. What's the logjam? Lack of iron. If I put iron back in for that athlete, they start feeling and doing better immediately. Did I need to overhaul their entire dietary approach? I need you to drink more water. I need you to eat every X hours. I need you to cut back on the processed carbs and the sugar. And am I going to give them 100 things when all they needed was iron to feel better? No. So that's the idea here. Find the limiting factor, remove it. That's what strategic is. Some of the other 5s are segmented. It has to be a segment of the whole. It can't be eat more protein. That might be too big. We might try and get more protein in at certain meals, or it might be a very specific thing. At breakfast, eat more of X, right? But it's a segment of the big thing. And then the things have to come in sequence, okay? Think about in the gym, for example, right? If someone doesn't have good shoulder mobility, you might not be like, hey, we're going to go max bench press. Now we're going to work on max bench, all right? You have to do things in the right sequence. Okay, so we build our practices based on these criteria, and again, this is what I want you guys to think about. If you're like, hey, this makes a little bit of sense, I might want to use this practice thing from time to time. How can you do that in the context of your coaching? Well, you have to build practices the right way. Okay, so that's curriculum, and again, I wanted to show you our actual curriculum for the entire coaching year with our clients, so you can see how it unfolds. Can't right now. What I might do is I might ask the event promoters that maybe they have your email addresses to send you a copy of my presentation, so that you guys can see the slides later, so that you have some of this, because I feel like it's a shame you're not getting it. So moving on from this idea of a year-long coaching curriculum designed to build practices that build skills that help you achieve your goals, is the idea of a coach plugging into that somewhere. It's not just automated, okay? That wouldn't work as well as what we do. The reason a coach can work with 350 people, though, is because they're coaching to a curriculum, right? We know what practices are coming up for most of our clients, and we know what roadblocks they're going to hit, so we can proactively work with them through it. Now, at Precision Nutrition, we have, like I said, we have about 20 full-time coaches, and they've been recruited from some killer jobs around the world. We have former NFL strength coaches who came to work with us, some of the best coaches in the world, okay? And they deliver this style of coaching to different kinds of clients. And when they all came to us, they were highly trained. Every time we put out a call for coaches, we get 1,000 applications. So we get to pick the cream of the crop. And still when they come in, they don't quite know our world-class level of coaching, because it's a very specific way of coaching, okay? And there's 2 main themes to it. One is moving from coach-centered to client-centered, okay? So our whole training program, and it takes like 14 months for our coaches to get onboarded, is helping them move from coach-centered to client-centered coaching. So coach-centered coaching looks a little bit like this, okay? Someone comes up to me at the gym and they're like, hey, you look like you're in pretty great shape. Oh, why, thank you. I'm wondering, what should I eat after my workouts? Now, a coach-centered coach knows I know a lot about protein synthesis and glycogen replenishment. I did a PhD looking at post-workout recovery. That was my doctoral work, right? I know a lot about this. I could actually write a 10,000-word dissertation on it, and did, okay? So when that client comes to me, I could tell them all about protein synthesis and the right kind of protein to use post-workout, and how carbs are required in a certain type of exercise to replenish muscle glycogen, and how 24 hours later X is happening, right? And that would be a coach-centered approach. It's about me and what I know. And you might be like, well, why is that a problem? Like, if you know that stuff, help that client know that. A client-centered approach might look like this. Hey, what do you eat after a workout? What should I eat after a workout? You look like you're in good shape. I'm trying to figure this out. And I might start with, what do you like to eat after a workout? It starts with a question. It's about getting to know that person rather than just disseminating textbook advice to them about how they ought to live their lives. Because they might not know what a protein is. So you're like, well, you need a fast digesting protein to maximize protein turnover. And they're like, don't know protein. What's that? Did bananas have protein? Right? So you have no idea what level they're at, what their knowledge is. And so the first thing a coach-centered coach does in that scenario is figure out something about them, not disseminate information. Coach-centered coach, and we've all been trained to be this, and early in our careers, it made us feel good to know things, so there's nothing wrong with it. But a coach-centered coach is about you. It's about what you know, and it's about just spewing that to anyone who asks. A client-centered coach is about them. Sometimes I do nothing more in a client session but ask questions. And they'll get frustrated, and they'll be like, but wait, you're the expert here. Just tell me the answer. And I'll be like, oh, I totally have an answer for you. But before I answer it, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it first. You know what I mean? It comes back to the client every time. So that's number one in our coaching. And number two in our coaching is moving from what we call awfulness-based coaching to awesomeness-based coaching. Okay? So awfulness-based coaching tries to fix problems. Okay? I'm coaching you on the squat, and I'm like, oh, your knee's kind of moving in, and your back's not flat, and you're not spreading the earth with your toes. Okay, we need to fix all these problems. And that's what we've been taught to coach, right? Awesomeness-based coaches look at what you're doing right and try and amplify that, okay? So I'll give you an example. Let's say someone is struggling with the nutrition portion of your work together, okay? But they're an awesome executive. Okay? They're really good with time management. They're good with their team. They have success in another area of life. And we often forget that, right? For those of you who have clients paying you like $100 an hour to train with you, okay? They must not suck at some aspect of their life, right? They might be bad about squatting, but there's something they're doing right, and it's easy to forget that. How many times have you been my clients, they're all idiots. They can't even eat just protein with breakfast. And you're like, yeah, but that's the CEO of a company who has a private jet and makes 800 grand a year. So before you dismiss them as a person, what are they doing right? Look for the awesomeness in them and then try and leverage that to help them eat better. If they're good with schedules, let's break out the schedule. Let's make a spreadsheet. You know, let's figure out what you're good at and use that in the service of your health and fitness goal rather than pointing out all the areas that you suck and you're terrible and having to fix them. So this is what we spend it's more complicated than this, but about 14 months trying to help our coaches become client-centered and awesomeness-based. And when you have that, right, your whole project becomes about the client. You're not writing diets for them. You're helping them explore how they need to be eating in the context of their life, okay? You can eat 1 meal a day or you can eat 6 meals a day. What works for you? Not for your abs, but for your schedule, for your life, for your children, okay? And that is stuff you have to discover. So part one is curriculum, right? How did we go from 20 clients to be able to handle 350 with better results? One is creating a curriculum, a known curriculum, building skills that we know work for specific goals. Next is have coaches coach what we think is the correct way, right? So rather than being like, oh, okay, you're struggling with this, change it this way, you put it back on them. When has this worked for you in the past? How can we make this work for you now? Okay? Focus on the client, their strengths. And we do that through the last part that I want to cover, which is technology. Okay? So one of the things that annoyed me most when I was a young coach was that I had to do everything manually. I was writing out bills for clients. I was writing their programs by hand. Right? When they had to cancel, they called me on the phone and I had to jockey client. Everything was automated, and I spent a tremendous amount of time doing things that weren't coaching. Even writing programs at a certain point, like if 10 of your clients have the same goal and they move fairly similarly, do they all need an individual workout program that's special for them? Not really, okay? So there's a bunch of stuff that was taking most of my time, that was no fun, and the thing I was really good at, which was coaching, overcoming obstacles, was just such a small part of what I did, and that was annoying. So we thought, are there ways to outsource that part, the annoying stuff, to technology? And there is, right? So we built a coaching platform that does all of that so that our coaches are free to do what coaches do. Coach, work with the person, help overcome obstacles. And again, I wanted to show you some examples of that, but essentially, I can describe it. All right, it's going to sound way lamer than it looks, and I apologize for that. But when a client starts with us, they start right away on an intake process. And the intake process just asks them a ton of questions about themselves. And they can answer them on their phone or tablet or computer or whatever. And we get pretty deep into their lifestyle in those questions. And the answers to those questions actually generate their program. Okay? Or let's call it V1 of their program. So we know enough about them at intake that no human had to intervene to establish what habits and practices they're going to need to work on over the next little while. It's already generated in just a few minutes after they've done their intake, okay? Now at this point, our coach will drop them a line and be welcome. We just worked on your program. Here it is, okay? And make that connection because that's critical. But you can see how a huge amount of admin, we're going to meet, we're going to talk about your goals, is just outsourced to technology, which does it better anyway, because the computer never has a bad day. I have bad days when I'm sitting in front of clients. I might not always be my best self, patient, empathic, willing to listen to all the things. The computer doesn't object to that at all. It just takes in all the information and creates a program based on that. Then each day, the computer checks in, sends a card or a check-in that says, hey, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to work on this practice. Here's why. Here's a lesson that goes along with it. Here's an assignment that you might do at the grocery store or with your family. And then at the end of each day, have you done your practice for the day, yes or no? And you check in each day, and this is all logged and recorded. At the end of every 2 weeks, they upload photos of themselves, skin folds, if we're doing skin folds, measurements, weight, right? So the metrics. So they can do it on their own, they can do it at home and upload it through their phone, or they can come in and see you if it's in person and have it done with you. Either way is fine. But you see how we're just streamlining and automating most of the things that took most of the time before, right? And then everything's just logged. They have a progress area where they can see everything. It's all plotted. They can see their before and after pictures or their before and ongoing pictures, right? They can see how many times they checked in, and so can we. Our coaches have a killer dashboard with a list of all their clients and an overview of them, okay? And then you can click into each client and see all the data that the client's uploaded. Oh, I see they haven't checked in X number of days. That might be time to reach out and see what's going on. We even have a machine learning algorithm now that can predict with like 80% accuracy whether someone is likely to drop out of the program in the next 2 weeks, okay? Because there's early indicators of this. There's an amount of engagement, amount of showing up, amount of saying yes and no to your habits, okay? That tell us in advance, hey, this person needs a reach out right now because they might be at risk of dropping out over the next little while if they don't get a more personal conversation. So then our coach might call them. They might do a video conference, something that's personal touch, okay? And so the whole idea is technology has created this ability to outsource all that stuff so that what you can do is just drop in at the most critical coaching moments and do what a coach should be doing. Coach, help someone overcome an obstacle or even predict which obstacle is going to come up for them in advance and eliminate it before they ever felt the tension. And this happens all the time with our clients. It's awesome. They're always like, how did you know I was going to struggle with this? Like we send them something in advance. And we're like, hey, over the next 2 weeks, you're going to struggle with this particular thing. So I'd like you to think through what's going to come up when you hit that roadblock. And they're like, there's no stress, there's no anxiety to it because they haven't hit the roadblock yet. And now they have 3 examples of things they'll try, and then they overcome it, and they're like, how did you know, coach? And we're like, well, that's because it's what we do, right? We've coached people through a curriculum in this way enough times to know what's coming up so that we look like fortune tellers, but it's just the process that's gotten us to that place, okay? So what happened was after we built a lot of this, coaches all over the world started contacting us saying, hey, how do I do that? Like, how do I learn that process? So from that was born our certification program, right? So today we've certified close to 50,000 coaches in our model, But one of the issues was, how many people here are level 1 certified? Okay, so most of you, that's awesome. Great. So the idea was people go through this, but they didn't have yet access to our technology. So they understood the system, but we were coaching this way with our clients, and we were teaching them how, but they're like, that's great, but I'm never going to build a $5 million tech platform to do what you do that way. So we made available a year and a half ago something called ProCoach. And ProCoach lets coaches in their businesses use our technology with them as the front and center coach. So people can get certified in our method and then use the stuff I'm talking about right here, which I would have loved to show you, to do that with their clients. And why do they do that with their clients? Well, one is to solve the same problems that we were talking about earlier, right? You're not coaching enough people, you think you can make a bigger impact, right? 2, you think you'd probably be getting better results if you could just focus on coaching instead of the logistics of business, right? 3, you'd like some of your own time back, right? Like with a small number of clients, it's a lot of workload even. And the last one is maybe you want to make some more money. Maybe you want to stop trading dollars for hours. Well, I work with clients, and when I'm with them, I make X number of dollars an hour, but if I go on vacation, I make no money at all, right? So is there a way to use this to trade dollars for hours differently, okay? And so I'm happy to say, like over the last year and a half, we've had thousands of coaches use it, and they've gone on to coach over 100,000 clients themselves. So what's super cool about what's happening at PN now is it took us about 12 years to get to about 50,000 clients coached, okay? In the last year and a half, another 100,000 people have been coached using the model, right? So it's this amazing thing where for us, that was the original question, wasn't it? And I don't share a lot of this to even brag about our success. It's actually a way to say, remember what I said in the beginning, like I was a personal trainer with 20 clients, working a lot, feeling burnt out, ready to leave the field, okay? And we asked a few critical questions, right? Is there a way to get more people coached with better results so we have more leverage and so that we can possibly make more money doing what we love doing? And maybe I'm willing to give that a try because I'm ready to just give up on this altogether. Now here today, Precision Nutrition is a $200 million business. We're coaching hundreds of thousands of people. We're coaching and educating tens of thousands of coaches who are going on to leverage this thing to change the world. So it's very exciting for me. So this is where I want to bring it back to you guys. Fuck. I want to bring it back to you guys at this point, okay? Because I'm going to wrap up. Hey, it's working now. Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I will do the video. I'll show you the video now because it's cool. So it's just a little recap of our talk. Do we have audio or no? No audio. Wah, wah. So you can see the pictures anyway. That's a start. So these are all clients of ours. Again, there's been a lot of them. And so these are examples of us just going around the world and surprising our top performing clients with money. And you can see some of the transformations they made. And again, this is using the model we talked about. Again, the coaching program's 12 months, and it's not based on writing people diets. It's based on practices. Practices that build skills, skills that change lives in the long run, okay? Because if you built the skill, you can do this forever, whenever. If you're following a diet, you're doing it or you're not. So that's a visit to England. Sue was one of our British winners. We've been all over the world, Italy, Australia, doing cool stuff like this. This is a great little scene where Jay is like, oh, keep your chin down here. I need your back to be flat so you can take a look at this. I think that was a $25,000 check. And so here people are just talking about the program, and what they're sort of underscoring is the idea that they've tried tons of stuff before. And it wasn't until they learned this skill building sort of model that it stuck. You know, you can find these people 3 years, 5 years later, still what they accomplished. They didn't gain all the weight back. You know, they accomplished this, and they've been able to maintain it. And it's one of the things we're most proud of. And here's Patrick, who lost like 152 pounds. He's like, hey, for the first time in my life, girls are interested. That's what he's saying right now. There was one of our young dudes usually like it when we roll in with like a fat stack of cash. So that guy, we brought a big chunk of cash to. He's like, whoa, that's what $10,000 looks like. And so, I mean, the money isn't the point, okay? It's a cool thing we get to do, you know? But the point is, time after time, reproducible, reliable change, using a method that's very different from what the fitness and health industry traditionally does, which is let me write you a prescription, a workout program, a diet, and if you are disciplined and worthy, you're willing to work hard, you'll get it. And if not, that's not my job, okay? We take a fundamentally different approach. We think it is your job as a coach to help produce this kind of transformative change. And if someone's struggling, it's because you're missing something as a coach, okay? I don't think people are fundamentally lazy, especially if they've self-selected to come see you, right? Maybe there's this group of lazy people out there, but they haven't raised their hand and said, I need help, and I'm gonna pay you to help me, okay? So I feel like if we take that approach, oh, you're just not hardcore enough, you don't deserve it, we're missing all the rest of the results. I mean, it's good for us if you do that in your practice. It's good for PN, because they'll find us eventually, and they'll come work with us. But I love for you guys not to have to send them to us. I love for it to work in the context of your business. So I'm going to try and wrap it up here. And this is a time where I want you to start thinking about taking this out of this room and into your practice, okay? I want you to start thinking about what are the things that you're not doing on the curriculum side. Do you even have a curriculum for your clients? Is there a stepwise process? I mean, this just isn't nutrition coaching. In the high performance world, you know, if you start a child in a sport like cross-country skiing or whatever, there's a long-term athletic development plan already laid out for them, okay? You put a 6-year-old in cross-country skiing in Canmore, Alberta, Canada, and the next 12 years of their skiing plan are already laid out, okay? That's a curriculum, okay? Do you have anything like that? And if you don't, it's fine, I didn't. But how could you start building that? Even small steps towards that. The next is your coaching. How much true client-centered, awesomeness-based coaching are you doing? Is there more that you could do? Can you level that up somehow? And last, technology to deploy the curriculum. Are you using any technology at all right now? Are you outsourcing, billing, certain scheduling aspects? You know, do you have a scheduler tool where people can just book their calendar to schedule with you without having to check in and text you? Do you have a way to ask for if someone did the thing you asked them to do today without texting them? If not, how can you get that? Is it something you can build? Is it something you can hire? Is it something you can rent? Okay? And I'll probably wrap it up here with just this idea, you know? I don't come out to these things to talk. I come out to these things to hopefully help you guys make some change in your practice and see some growth and development. So if I were to come back next year and I were to see you here, right, and I'm like, hey, you were the guy with the blue sweatshirt. I saw you last year. What will you have done in the last 365 days? What will you have taken from this, put into your practice to help grow yourself, grow your staff if you have a staff, or help your clients? And then the last question I have is, will you be proud of the answer? Will you feel like, man, I rocked it? When JB sees me, I told him it was this, and man, I'm super proud of it, and he was proud of me too. So I'm going to leave it at there today. Thanks for your patience with our technology issues. Hopefully you got a few things that when I see you next year, you'll be like, hey, I put this into practice, and it was awesome. Thank you. So thanks, everyone.